Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today we're reviewing the new album from Prophets of Rage. So today we're going to be talking about this new Prophets of Rage album, and pretty much Prophets of Rage, kind of a new outfit, but really a band made up of members of existing groups. This is really a super group here with members from Rage Against the Machine, Public Enemy, and Cypress Hill. Kind of making this sort of rap metal, rap rock super group in a sense, and this is the first album that they're really putting out, though they did release an EP last year. Now, of course, when it comes to actually who from which group is in this actual band here, it's mostly the instrumentation being provided by Rage Against the Machine instrumentation with the DJ whose name I'm slipping my mind at the moment, from Public Enemy, along with Chuck D and Be Real from Public Enemy and Cypress Hill respectively. And when it comes to my previous experience with some of these other groups, I would have to say I am a fan of Rage Against the Machine and Public Enemy. When it comes to Cypress Hill, I'm not really super familiar with a ton of their music. Of course, I am familiar with some of it, some of the songs that most people are familiar with, but I'm not super into their discography, or haven't really explored it all that much, to be honest. So when it comes to this review and when I talk about any of those respective groups that the members of this group are from, I may not be quite as knowledgeable when it comes to that particular group. But it's not really going to matter all that much, considering that this is a new band, a new project, so you should pretty much be able to get into it without any prior knowledge of these artists' previous groups, really. At least that's my own take on it. So really, what is there to say about this Prophets of Rage album, the first output we really get from this band? Pretty much, I'd have to say that this project is average overall, and average is just the word that I keep coming back to every time I listen to this thing and really kind of think about it, try to analyze it a bit more. Average is just overall the feel I get from this project. Now, concerning my previous expectations for this project, I really didn't know what to expect from it. I mean, I like some of the outputs from the bands that were kind of making up the supergroup, but this is a completely different project. I mean, for crying out loud, Rage Against the Machine haven't released new material in a long time at this point. So, this is a pretty much entirely new, different thing. Though, of course, the ties to the previous bands are there to some degree. Of course, Prophets of Rage being the name of a Public Enemy song, and of course having Rage in the title, kind of brings back Rage Against the Machine, kind of obviously. I'm not sure, maybe there's some sort of Cypress Hill thing going on in there as well that I just don't get because I'm not super familiar with that group. But, I guess I had some high hopes for this project, considering that I do like these artists' music to begin with. But this project just overall just kind of feels to be honest. It's, kind of what you would expect it to sound like, given that, you have the instrumentation of Rage Against the Machine with, a more hip-hop driven, I guess you would say, delivery here. A more old-school kind of hip-hop just delivery in terms of the vocals here. And, it's kind of exactly what you'd expect. The instrumentation is probably one of the stronger points here on the album. It sounds nice. I do like how you can really kind of hear everything that's going on there. The bass sounds nice, the drums sound nice, the guitars are pretty good, especially there's some nice riffs thrown in here as well. However, nothing really does overall, I'd have to say, in the grand scheme of things, really stand out as being super, really memorable or super, above average, to be honest. Well, even though the instrumentals are fine here, every time I'm listening to these songs, I'm just thinking to myself, I could be listening to Rage Against the Machine right now, but I'm not, because I have to do this review. And really, that's kind of the only thing that kept me going with repeated listens of this project, knowing that I was going to review it here on the channel. Because if it was up to me, I probably would have just stopped and gone back to listen to Rage Against the Machine or Public Enemy, or maybe even explored Cypress Hill's discography a bit more, because maybe that would have also had a lot of more interesting stuff in it than what's on this project. The rapping here, once again, is just kind of average as well. I think Chuck D and Be Real, I mean, I'm not super familiar with him compared to Chuck D, but I think they're both talented MCs for sure. They could definitely rap. But here on this project, once again, they're just kind of average. And that's not to say that they're really bad here. I mean, at times their flows do feel a bit more old school, I guess, in their sound, not nearly as new or as polished as some newer acts. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, to be honest, considering a lot of the appeal of this group is going to be kind of a throwback appeal. So I'm kind of okay with that. But still, they just kind of end up sounding average here a lot of the times. It's just, there, really. And the lyrics here on this project aren't anything particularly interesting either. Now, concerning the lyrics, they're very political, which is pretty much what you would expect from a supergroup with members from the bands that they're from, considering that the bands that they're from, the artists that, the groups really that they were from, were rather political, at least the ones I'm familiar with. So I was kind of expecting political lyrics here on this project, and just given the political atmosphere of 2017 here in the United States, I think they had a lot that they could have done. However, what they decided to go with here is just some very typical average stuff. Once again, that word average comes up because they tackle all the subject matter that I would kind of expect them to tackle on a project like this, but they don't really do it in a super interesting or innovative way. Not a way that really kind of is new to, a listener like me who listens to a lot of music. I've already heard all these messages that they're delivering here on this project done better this year in general, throughout 2017. And we're only like 3/4 of the way through the year. I've already heard these messages done better on previous albums this year. And that's just this year. If we want to go back into previous years as well, more recent years, that is, just with similar messages and songs, there's plenty out there that just have these similar messages. Pretty much they're trying to get at the same points that they're trying to make here on this project, which is do it in a lot more of an interesting and a new way. This here, it's, like I said, the messages aren't bad, it's just, I just feel like I could be listening to other songs that have a similar message and are better, pretty much. And that's just really, once again, a reoccurring thing with this project. When I'm listening to it, I just feel like I could be listening to something a bit more interesting or a bit better. However, the project that we have here isn't exactly bad on its own either, which is kind of a weird, a weird sort of thing. It's not like this album is bad or anything, it's just not super interesting, and there's so many other projects that it kind of reminds me of that I could rather be listening to that would be better. And that's not really doing any favors for this project overall. Considering some of the actual tracks here on this project, the strongest tracks in my opinion are the first two, to be honest, because I can't really tell if it's because they come earlier in the track listing and I'm just, a lot more alert, just a lot more, I guess you could say, focused on these tracks because they come at the beginning of the project, or if they're actually a bit more above in quality compared to the rest of this album. I think there's some of the stronger cuts here, and if I'm going to be returning to any tracks, it's probably going to be the first two, at least in my opinion. They start off the album with a lot of that rage that you would kind of expect, given, it's Prophets of Rage, and that's something that they definitely do deliver with here on this project. They definitely do seem angry throughout most of it. More on that later, concerning the most of it part, but yeah, they definitely do kind of capture that rage that you kind of expect them to have. And at least that's a good thing that they bring here. However, I don't feel like they ever get super angry or anything like that. Maybe like I would have wanted them to be a bit more, like I said before, the fact that the lyrics here aren't exactly super innovative or super new or interesting kind of goes along with that. I feel like if they were saying something super new or something super shocking and just, brand new overall, I think it would have had a lot more just impact overall. Whereas here, because they're not really saying anything super new or interesting, the vocal, the rapping, the delivery of it here just isn't super interesting overall, and doesn't sound, super angry for the most part. I mean, the anger is still there, but yeah, you get the point pretty much. And that's for most of the songs here on this project, to have a bit of an angry feel to them. But then you get the tracks like Legalize Me, track number 3, which is just, arguably my least favorite song here. I don't like the vocal effects used on B Real's voice. They just sound really kind of obnoxious, as well as just the fact that the hook of this track is very repetitive. It's just not one of my favorites. And combine that with the fact that the instrumentation here is a bit more laid back and not quite as aggressive. I mean, it still does sound nice. I do have to give it back. Like I said before, the instrumentation is the strongest point of this project overall, I would have to say. But still, it's just, a bit more mellow. And it doesn't really work in my opinion, especially given the more redundant nature of the track and just those vocal effects. Overall, it's not a track that I particularly favor, and it's not one that I'm really going to find myself coming back to in the future. And really, as far as the rest of the tracks here on this project go, there's, like I said before, some good riffs that pop up every now and then. The bass guitar sounds nice. The DJ work is also really cool. You get this sort of interesting short track here, the Counteroffensive, which is just kind of this short little, I guess you could say, not even a full song, just sort of this intermission type track almost, that pops up, which I really could have done without in the grand scheme of the project, but it doesn't sound out of place, which I guess is a good thing as well. Overall, if you can't already tell, I'd have to say that this project is just average overall. Another just positive point about this album, though, before we wrap things up, the runtime of this album, really the length of it, not particularly long. It's, I believe, around 40 minutes or so, which is a nice amount of time. It doesn't really overstay its welcome, this album, even though the tracks do kind of start to blend together and just, feel very similar towards the end of this project, because you pretty much get 12 tracks here of sort of rap rock, rap metal, just sort of with a similar structure all the way through pretty much. With the exception of that one track I was talking about before, the counteroffensive, which really doesn't follow that structure because it's really not even much of a song. But yeah, overall I'd have to say that this album is average overall. If you're a fan of Rage Against the Machine or Public Enemy, and probably Cypress Hill as well, like I said, I can't definitely say anything about that, but I'm just going to assume that if you're a fan of that group, you might enjoy something here on this project, because I feel like it does take many elements from those groups and rearranges them and reuses them again here on this project. However, if you're someone looking for a brand new Rage Against the Machine album, you're not going to get it here. If you're looking for a new Public Enemy album, well, first of all, they released a new album a couple months ago. I actually reviewed it here on my channel. If you want to check that out, and you probably should listen to that also. I also thought that was a rather average album overall. But here, once again, it's just average. As far as anything else really has to go, yeah, I mean, it's not trouble to listen to. It's not like it's a problem for me to sit through this album. It's just there's really not much to come back to with this project. I don't really feel compelled to return to this project when I can just go back to a Rage album or a Public Enemy album, which I feel like would satisfy the same thirst, but without being as average and mediocre as this album is. Once again, this isn't necessarily a bad album all the way through. It's just I feel like I could be listening to other things, which isn't what you want to be thinking when you're listening to an album. The last thing you want to be thinking when you're listening to an album is, I could rather be listening to something else right now. When you're listening to an album, you want to be completely immersed in that project. So, of course, if you want to be listening to something else, you're obviously not very immersed in that project. So overall, yeah, this is just an average project in my opinion. If you're a Rage Against the Machine fan, Public Enemy fan, Cypress Hill fan, maybe it's worth checking out. But if you're not a fan of those groups, if you're not a fan of rap metal, rap rock, it's really not worth your time, to be honest. And if you're just kind of, iffy on the idea, you're not quite sure if you'll like it, you're not really missing much if you decide to skip this over. But yeah, if it does sound interesting to you, I definitely recommend you check it out, because maybe you will like it more than I did. And if you're kind of looking for rap metal in 2017, there's not many other options out there to go to, I guess. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for this project. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you leave a like and comment down below your thoughts on the project. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future album reviews. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay golden.